A little Erico action. We're gonna grill him today and find out all of his deep dark secrets, and then we got.
Hey guys, we got no sound.
Always.
It's on now. Sorry, for some reason the setting got turned off.
Sound is back.
Sound is back. All right. So everybody that missed that can't read lips. My sweet hat is here. That's what's important. And then Mr. Erico, if you could say hello again.
Hello again.
See?
Hello again. See?
Follows directions really well.
I do.
Yeah. So I hope everyone can hear us now. There we go. Got sound. We've got. We're going to grill Mr. Erico here for all his deep dark secrets, and then we're going to discuss
hang out.
Case study action. Hang out. Maybe some case study, right? Maybe. Okay.
Hang out.
If we're lucky and Bren is up to it, then.
It's not really a case study. We'll put that out there.
Yeah, we're just going to discuss. We're going to have a good time.
Technique study.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
So,
All right. So how are we starting this? Good evening, everybody. There we go. I want to
fantastic.
thank you so much, Eric, for joining us tonight, man. Really appreciate
No problem.
it. I don't know. Have you ever kind of told your story online, anything like this before? Like how you got into the business and how talk about your business and your everyday business and talk about the YouTube stuff. Have you ever done that or?
Not really. I mean, I suppose a little bit in passing, as far as how I got into this business. As far as owning my own shop, of course, that's always been a bit of a dream of mine. To own my own shop. Grew up in a family shop. Actually, I grew up in this shop. I was born in '79. My dad had purchased this shop in 1980.
We're the same exact age. That's awesome.
Yeah. So essentially, people ask, how long have you been into this business? Essentially, my whole life. I grew up here. I went to school here. I rode my bike here, and so I've always been around it. My dad's a mechanic. My uncle used to work here. Both of my brothers own shops.
Currently, right now.
Yeah, currently, yeah, that's right.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
They're your competition.
You guys run the whole town, basically. Got a monopoly.
yeah. So we have a kind of a monopoly in the area. My brother, I own the automotive, light duty stuff here. My brother Doug, he owns 80 by 130 shop. He works on big trucks, heavy diesels. My brother Scott works on farm equipment and does on-site farm tire service. And my dad also works at a shop. He sold his shop to my brother, and then when he retired, he went and got a job at another shop on a farm, a big, huge dairy farm. Runs 24-hour a day operation there.
You guys got that town covered, man.
Yeah, pretty well.
Yeah, South Main, North Main, West Main, East Main. They got it all.
All the mains.
Yeah, so oddly enough, I guess I've told very few people the story how I started. So in '99, I finally was done with school in January. Had enough of that. Went to work for my dad, and then of course, working with family is pretty tough. I love my dad. We get along great. We don't work together great.
Yeah, but.
Yeah. So, needless to say, I worked with him for 6 years, and then oddly enough, I got fired.
Your dad fired?
Your dad fired you?
Yeah. We used to have some pretty big powwows, some knockdown, drag outs. It was mostly me getting knocked down and dragged out. But my wife worked there, and he said something to her. I'll give you the short version. He said something to her, so I got in his face about it, and next thing you know, I need a job. That's the very short, very rated G version of it.
Yeah. That's the way most shop owners are unemployable. That's the way Pete Rudloff says it, and I think it's pretty accurate.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I don't do well with working for people.
I 100% agree.
Yeah. Yeah, needless to say, I was already in the midst of purchasing this shop. Clearly, I didn't want to open it. It ended up being December of 2014. Starting out my business, I didn't want to open with heat bills and worried about snow plowing and all that stuff. So it wasn't my intention to open my business then, but the day I got fired, I was like, well, screw it. I didn't have anything. I didn't have anything in the shop. I had a 30-gallon Craftsman upright air compressor. I had no lift and just my tools. I had a used tire machine and a used tire balancer and an open sign and the money in my pocket.
Did that used tire machine and used tire balancer, did it not like when you put new tires on it?
Funny guy.
So you opened up there at that facility in 2014, the end of 2014.
2005.
Oh, I thought you said 2014.
Yep. 2005 is when I opened up here, and that's what I opened with. And I just worked essentially around the clock. I would work.
No. You only worked 8 to 5.
Yeah. I like to work 8 to 5 now because I can.
That's
back
me.
when I first opened, well, put it this way: I got married, had a kid, and bought a business all in the same year. And we didn't go on a honeymoon ever. We didn't go on our first vacation for 8 years because I was paranoid of not working.
That's the American dream, right?
Oh yeah, it's wonderful. I mean, I was sitting back, just collecting checks, sleeping on $100 bills.
Yeah.
Folks, start your own shop. It'll be great.
Yeah.
And then you woke up from the dream.
You'll be cleaning the bathroom from the massive oil spill that sprayed in there when you were trying to empty the recovery tank at midnight.
That is tough. You have to flush multiple times.
And then you got to clean the ducts with your Dawn.
Yeah.
Grease Trap's not a fan of that.
So, and I didn't, my biggest fear was, clearly, obviously going out of business, and I didn't want any debt. So I would just work until I could afford to buy something. So I would work, and then I bought a good air compressor, and I'd work more, and, I bought a lift, and I bought another lift, and, more tools. I bought a lot of used stuff from auctions and things like that until, I guess, fast forward, here I am today. And it worked out well. I'm able to own my own building, no mortgage, everything in it I own, and it's just how it turned out. We had good business, and just thankfully no big mistakes in the beginning. Nothing that costs a lot of money, and it costs a lot of money to run a shop because I wanted to do it legit. Run everything through on the books, and have the proper insurance, and it was a struggle for a lot of years, but it worked out well.
That's cool.
Now, being like a lone wolf, doing everything yourself, is that good for your business plan? I mean, does it work for you, or is it a hindrance?
Is there any goals for like increasing staff, or are you plan on just kind of keeping things the way they are?
Well, that gets, I don't know how to say it. I want to say it gets somewhat personal. I've seen, and like I said, I do love my parents, but I've seen how a growing business was very taxing on them. Having lots of employees, a big shop, lots of stress. Of course, working by yourself has its own stresses. Honestly, I just want to work until I can't, and then I'll come up with a plan B. I'm saving, for retirement and have, investments and stuff. I don't want to be any bigger than I am. I like being a one-man shop. My boy, well, not my boy, I call him my boy. Josh works with me. He worked with me. He's a young homeschooled kid. Came here, never worked on cars ever. Has a lot of eagerness to learn and willingness to learn. Is very good at paying attention and listens well and doesn't steal, and he's on to work, every day on time. Just a really, really good kid, and I see he had a lot of potential, so he worked with me for a couple of years, and then I told him that he should go off to college to get a formal education, and he chose to go to a local college here for automotive training, and he's just about done with his second year. Actually, he's back right now on his winter break, and has gained a lot, and I just felt that I couldn't teach him the basics that he was going to need, because I felt I was just so far removed from that, having just grown up with it. I'm like, gosh, I really want to help you. I want what's best for you, but I don't even know where to begin. He's the type of guy that I'd give him a task, and I would show him exactly how I want something done, and he will do it, and he will do it that way every single time, no questions asked, no matter how long it takes.
That's awesome.
So I just wanted to see him succeed, and he's done really well. He's graduated, or he's going to be graduating top of his class. He's top in his class right now, in the top, I think, 2 or 3 students. So he's doing really well. His teacher really likes him. Unfortunately, there is some of the downside of him going to school, and he just took his engine performance drivability class, and his teacher is, and no offense if he's watching, his teacher is a former GM tech, and it is flowchart city, and you pull codes, you get flowcharts, you do not ever touch a test light, and it's quite frustrating because he wants to do well, so he has to do the curriculum in order to pass, but he also knows that he's never seen me use one of them, and he knows something's kind of fishy, and so I just told him I'm going to let him finish with college because I don't want to taint his brain and make him flunk out. I'm going to let him finish college and then, show him that flowcharts are the hopeless dreams that end with replacing the ECM.
Show him how to make his own flow chart.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, but he is getting some understanding of, circuit design and, basic electrical and, stuff that I really wanted him to get. And then when he's done with that, we can, hopefully shape and mold him into being a little more efficient.
Nice. So you'll be a 2-man shop.
Yep. And that works well. Because typically when I'm by myself, I'm about 3 weeks backlog on, getting an appointment. So when he's here, we're only about a week and a half out, and that runs pretty much year round. All winter, all summer, we're just jam packed. We have a pretty big client base, and so it works.
How'd you get hooked up with him? How'd you meet him?
Actually, I worked on his parents' vehicle. I did work for his parents and some of his parents' friends, and he expressed a big interest in, auto repair. And, so, I just had offered him, hey, would you mind coming here first? I hate to see somebody invest a lot into it, either go to college on their own, having never ever done it, to find out like, whoa, this isn't for me. I didn't realize that, brake lines suck, gas lines suck, cars are rusty, at least in our region, the auto repair industry can really
Just
suck.
ship it down to Florida where you don't have to deal with it.
Yeah, Bryn doesn't own a torch.
Oh, really?
I do own a torch.
I do.
It just doesn't move very much.
I mean, torch, I got like 5 air hammers. I keep 2 spare torch tanks, inductive heaters, you name it.
Torch all of the things.
Yeah.
So
No, they come down here with a little surface rust on the brake lines and we freak out.
They salt in the summertime.
Yeah, we get salt year round. They salt our dirt roads in the summertime with salt brine, and then of course, we get salt for 6 months out of the year in the winter.
I used to work with a guy who was fresh from California, and he had to do rear brakes on a Chrysler, and he couldn't handle the fact that the rear brake lines were like they didn't want to move like Chryslers never do, and he quoted that up to the front. Needs brake lines front to back, needs a master cylinder, needs wheel cylinders. I'm like, yo, listen, just unfold the thing and spin it out, spin it back in.
Yeah.
He had no idea what to do.
Oh yeah.
It's insane.
Hey, I'm in the same boat. I've got no clue how to work on rusty stuff. We turn it away.
I'll teach you to do things.
All the shops I've worked in for my entire career, if it's that rusty, we've turned it away.
Yeah, I have a friend in South Carolina, and he says they can be dead, no cars in the shop. He goes, car pulls in from Rust Belt. He's like, we too busy. That's all he says. We too busy.
If I get the Suburban with busted brake lines, no way.
Yeah. It's just a way of life. I mean, I've done probably 100,000 feet of brake lines. I mean, you tell me what year and model, which line, I'll probably bend it for you.
I've done 0, not a single brake line. My entire
Seriously?
career.
Are you serious?
With the exception of like some custom stuff on my own cars, 0 I've ever done as a repair
Man,
for brake lines.
you've never been in the middle of winter not knowing if that's brake fluid or snow dripping on you.
You
No.
gotta taste it.
I kid, but we get, being on the coast, we get rust, and we get stuff. I mean, being in Florida, we get snowbirds come down, so we get them, but not every.
I've worked on maybe a dozen cars from the Rust Belt my entire career.
You
They don't go to Oklahoma. Who the hell wants to go to Oklahoma, man?
Yeah, hey, I'm in northeastern Oklahoma. I'm basically Kansas. So, and I spent 5 years. Yeah, and I
There you
spent
go.
5 years.
That stuff right there, yeah.
5 years in Colorado on the on the east side of the mountains, and there's not much rust there either.
Well, dude, that's awesome. You have we have an acquisition problem, and you have acquired a new soul into our industry. And you've helped guide him, and you've actually encouraged him to go to school. That's pretty awesome. Most shop owners are like,
Very.
you don't need that. Just stay here, and we'll pay you like $8 an hour to work 12 hours a day in the dungeon. So
Exactly.
good for
Yeah,
you.
well, like I said, I mean, I see a lot of potential in him, and I don't want him over here on this side of the shop. This is where he works. I don't want him doing oil changes and changing tires and brakes, which he does, extremely well. As petty as it sounds, he does every task he's given extremely well, and I know he has potential. So, and he loves what he does. So there's no reason not to advance.
Nice.
We got a question from PSK, Mr. Mike. He says, ask Eric, did he gain his diagnostic skills out of necessity due to where he lives and lack of dealers, or a true passion?
I would say a true passion. I've always, I guess, as cliche as it sounds, I've always said and believe, any job worth doing is worth doing good. I like to be good at what I do. I like learning, as much as I can. Of course, this is a, ever-changing industry. I don't want to be the guy who we still run into in shops that are like, all these newfangled electric stuff, these electronics, computers and brain boxes, we still have guys that run shops here that I do work for that still gripe about this stuff. Fuel injection's been around, pretty heavily since 1987. This is not newfangled technology. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy learning. I love to be able to, take on anything that comes in, except for European cars. The only things I don't work on.
Whoa, easy.
That's what Keith's for.
Well,
I run. That's the only thing I turn down. But yeah, I would say it's passion and necessity. If you're not doing that, then you're essentially a lube shop. I mean, no offense to anybody, but that's just how I see it, and I want to be more than that.
Now that leads into kind of what I wanted to ask you. Did you kind of start out being like a parts cannon guy and then wanted to then learn to figure it out on your own, or did you start out wanting to know the real reason why cars were fixed and you?
Absolutely! I absolutely wanted to know the real reason. I remember growing up here in the shop when GM was making the transition from feedback carburetors to throttle body, and my dad bought a Snap-on Counselor too, which I still have, and that just blew my mind. Here's this car, you don't have to go out and like pump the gas pedal to get it started, and you've got this electronic carburetor, and we've got this this brand new Counselor too. I remember it being in our living room for a while as we're reading on how to use it, and hooking that up and watching it parade, and going to some of the classes that he had went to learn about that, and it was super fascinating. And we had a OTC, I believe it was an OTC 1000. Looks like the Tech 2, but it took the cartridges, and
Yeah.
I remember when my dad got Noid lights and everything. I was really drawn to that because that was pretty cool. I knew I didn't really understand carburetors, lots of hoses and stuff, but this new stuff looked really cool. And then advancing from that to port fuel injection and seeing that transition, it was, I guess that's the era in which I really got sucked into and hooked into.
So you started out wanting to be basically a diagnostician and a mechanic all in one. That's a great base.
Yeah.
Sounds like he was kind of growing with the technology too. I mean, to some degree. Right?
Well, yeah. I mean, coming up in the shop, like I say, I remember the day he got the Counselor too, and we had you don't see them anymore, but there was a tool that came with it because before you had misfire counters, we could put a trigger on like a number one cylinder, and then we had this wheel. It looked like a timing light with a wheel on it, and you would stick it on the serpentine belt, and it would sync with the number one cylinder, so you could measure the misfire.
Nice.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And I mean, my dad, back in those days, he was pretty gung ho about it to be the guy who could diagnose this new fuel injection that was coming into the shop. And oh gosh, we had all kinds of neat things that were coming out back then. And ECM prom readers, when you used to have to pull the old prom out, we had a little box you could stick it in to see if it was any good. And,
Yeah.
I still got the EEC 3 and EEC 4 breakout boxes. And, I always thought that was really cool. Go in there, check individual components and, look it up. On Mitchell at the time, it was back when Mitchell was still on like 50 different CDs and the old motor books. And so, yeah, just growing up in the industry, I was always fascinated by that.
That's cool. Was there ever a time that you, did you expect to do anything else, or was this pretty much from as far back as you remember?
I wanted to be a farmer once. And
I wanted to be a cowboy.
Yeah. If people
But I was wearing
ask me,
shorts and cowboy boots at the same time. So
Yeehaw.
yeah, so a lot of people have asked me, what would I do if I didn't do this? Actually, the trade school I went to was for building trades, and that's simply because I went to take their automotive program, and it was quite evident that at that time I was quite a bit more advanced than the teacher, so I didn't figure I was going to benefit from that. So I switched classes to a building trades class, so I could learn how to build stuff. And never wanted to be a carpenter, but I wanted to acquire the skill. So I did that and graduated top of my class with that, and that was really helpful. And but yeah, no, I would be a farmer. If I wasn't a mechanic, I'd be a sport farmer.
it'd be pretty awesome. I do always want to be a cowboy, by the way. We have one client that's an actual cowboy that comes in, and it's like a man crush immediately. I asked him about his day. So, did you herd cattle today?
Yeah, that's fantastic. My wife likes to go to rodeos, and so we'll go to several rodeos throughout the year. And I admit I'm a little envious when I see these guys, in their tight Wranglers, no homo, but here's like this 45-year-old man on a horse, like ripping through an arena and jumps off on top of this calf and like flips it on the ground. It's like, can't help but feel like a pussy.
Yeah, pretty much.
My knees can't take that.
Like, what'd you do today? Oh, I changed somebody's oil. Oh, what'd you do today? I tackled a cow and rode a bull.
I managed to survive like the horns of a 2,500-pound bull today.
Yeah, pissed off bull.
Right.
So Eric, you're way upstate. So when's the last tractor pull you've been to? They don't
Tractor
have
pull?
one. Yeah.
Oh, we go to probably 2 or 3 tractor pulls a year.
Oh, see, I used to live up way upstate. I used to live way up by you, and I miss tractor pulls and French fries with vinegar on them. You don't get that by here.
That's by me.
So you don't have a county fair? I mean, the county fair is like the people at Walmart on steroids.
yeah.
Around here.
No, they don't have a Long Island County fair.
Oh, okay.
Now, if you take what happens?
What's that?
What happened, Keith?
Oh, he froze up. Oh, there you go.
Yeah. I said if you take what happens at the county fair in New York and just place all those people south a little bit, it's Oklahoma. Same thing.
Year round?
Year round, all the time.
I don't know how you get anything done, man.
Dude, it's so entertaining to just watch people.
Yeah, I mean, I
You
go to
think
the
this
county.
hat's nuts?
Yeah, I go to the county fair, and it's just mesmerizing.
Nice.
That's a good word.
So I guess what other people would like to know is how'd you get involved with YouTube?
So it's kind of funny. A while back, we were on Mitchell On Demand. I'm sure a lot of you guys use Mitchell. So a long time ago, Mitchell used to have their tip contest, and I don't know if you guys that used that back then actually recall that, but you could submit tips to them in written format of anything, whether it's time-saving tips, stuff like that. And so a lot of us started doing them, and they were written, and then we started adding pictures, and then guys started adding video, and implementing YouTube to them, and it became quite an aggressive competition. And I'd won that, several times. It was like a $300 prize at the time, and it became pretty cool. And one of my friends on there, who's actually passed away, he sent me like a picture of his bank statement. He's like, "Hey, look at this! I made $100 on YouTube." I'm like, "Oh, no way!" And he's a pretty cool dude. But I'm like, man, if that guy can do it, I should be able to do this, because he wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. And I shouldn't say that because he's dead, but you know, he was, you know, just kind of always sending me these photos like, hey, look at this, you know, look what I made. So honestly, that is the reason I tried it. I was like, well, you know, if we can use this for another source of income. And then I didn't think anybody was going to watch it, and it became kind of fun. And when we were on Mitchell, we used to go by, you know, Dr. O, Dr. V, Dr. D, you know, it's just kind of our screen names. So when I initially started YouTube, that's how if you look through my first videos, it's like, hey, Dr. O here, because it was kind of silly at first. And then I noticed that people started watching, and I was like, well, you know, this is, you know, it gets a little more serious. And then the biggest benefit from it is actually learning from others, because I get out of this, you know, back road of Avoca, New York, and you're opened up to the entire world, you know, the super highway. And I started to really see the benefits of, you know, hearing what others have to say and saying, wow, you know, I never thought of that, because I never really get out of this area. And this gives you a lot of exposure to a lot of people with a lot of different experiences and all different levels of, you know, mechanical ability. So if you take what they say with a grain of salt and, you know, look through the good comments and the people that are, you know, like you guys that are willing to share, it's pretty awesome. And so at that point, I started to get like a little more serious, like, okay, you know, we should make some, you know, more serious videos, you know, tell people my real name, that kind of stuff. So, and then it's all essentially snowballed from there. But it has been a, you know, a tremendous help and encouragement. It keeps you, I think it keeps you focused and on track to, you know, to strive to do good, because so many people are watching. So you want to, you know, not give bad advice or, you know, show bad practices, or at least try not to. But
Don't forget about the part there where you set up your friend, you know, while he's in the middle of getting bread and milk in the store, and then made him start making YouTube videos. Don't forget that part.
oh yeah, the guy named Keith.
Yeah, that guy.
Yeah,
Of course.
but he loves it. Don't let him fool you. So that's pretty much the, you know, long and short of it. That's how it got started. And then I just started to really see the value in it, not monetarily, but, you know, just the, you know, like I say, getting off this dirt road, and it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. So, like, when you first started doing it, did you feel awkward talking to an empty camera?
Don't you feel awkward talking to an empty camera?
Well, I'm looking at you, so I'm not even looking at my. I feel stupid when I do it.
Yeah, it was. It was pretty weird. But I guess one thing is I always liked, like if we would go to like parties, like we used to have like our own like redneck tractor pulls where you'd just bring your lawnmower and basically get drunk, and you know, we had a car hood and people would stand on it and you'd see whose lawnmower is the best. And then we have these snowmobile pond jumping parties where you take your snowmobile. Of course, it's in the middle of summer, and you know, you jump off this huge bank into the pond. And so I always liked recording that and then editing it, you know, from VHS tapes. I would, you know, had my VCR hooked to my computer so I could like edit it and add music to it, and you know, give it to my buddies, be like, hey, you know, you remember this? You know, probably not, but so I always kind of liked messing with the video stuff. I've never been great at it, but I always enjoyed that. So I tried to be mindful of that when I was making videos, tried to make it not awkward, but of course it was. It's not as awkward now, but it still is a little bit, particularly if somebody comes into the shop while I'm doing it, you know, I'm like, this weirdo over here, who's he talking to? You know?
How many times you got to restart a video because somebody walks over?
It used to be quite a bit, and I would get like, you know, almost pissed off, like, oh man, you freaking customers, you know. It's like, wait a minute, you know, I kind of need them. So anymore, I'll just, you know, I'll fix it. You know, somebody comes in and be like, oh, you know, shut it off and do a little redo.
That's cool. Yeah, I'm not a big fan of doing something and all of a sudden a noise happens or you feel stupid and you got to reset everything. I hate that.
Yeah, I don't get too technical. I mean, I got my little roll card over here. My camera just, you know, just a little Sony Handycam. It just sits on top of that, and I just roll it around with me. So I don't get too technical, and you know, my camera shakes, you know, because I'm throwing tools and stuff on my cart.
But it works.
Yeah, I don't have a lot of investment into, you know, I would like to have a really nice camera, but honestly, I'm on my third one because, I mean, they get brake clean, they get fluid film, they get, you know, sparks from the torch, they get knocked on the floor. I'd rather break a $200 camera from the Wally Mart than, you know, a $4,000 like 4K camera.
So we saw somebody in the chat. They wanted to know if you had the opportunity to be on TV, would you do that?
Well, I don't know. Honestly, my business is my bread and butter. If YouTube pulls the plug tomorrow, I'm still in the same, you know, I'm still just as good as I was before it started. I probably would consider it if I didn't have to give up my shop. You know, this is what feeds my family. This is what, you know, this is what made me who I am. So I would be very hesitant to give it up. I would be fearful that if I had lost my customers or they had to go somewhere else, that they may not be understanding and, you know, come back when I feel like coming back. I've been interviewed by a couple like reality TV things that they were doing on Discovery Channel a few times, and it's you start the interview process and then you get, you know, further down the chain, and, you know, I just tell them, like, look, you know, I don't have a face for TV. I got crooked teeth, no tattoos, and, you know, small arms, so I'm probably not your guy.
So, Tyrannosaurus Rex.
Yeah, it's just, you know, it's who it is. I mean, you guys want somebody who's like buff with a six-pack and straight teeth and wavy hair, but I don't have that. However, I can fix cars if you're looking for somebody to do that, but unfortunately,
They don't care.
the reality of reality TV is it's not real.
Yeah.
So,
And you can work a torch like nobody's business.
yes, I can, you know, I will cut that nut off that bolt and not hit the threads if you need to reuse them.
Dude, I've seen that happen. I've tried. I don't know how you do it. I've tried doing. I can't do that stuff with a torch.
It's all about commitment. So, you know, if you have, you know, a nut on a bolt,
Be
you know,
one
you
with
put
the
your
nut.
torch tip on there. The second you can blow sparks, you just got to do it and just get off it. And then if you didn't get it all, you got to wait for it to get cold again. That's the trick, because if you go back, now the base metal's hot and you're gonna hit the threads.
Yeah,
Nice.
Brent, that's how you do it.
Come on, I've been doing that since I was 8.
I do it wrong almost every time.
Oh man. Well, I just want to say you inspire the hell out of me. So that's, you know, part of the reason I'm here doing what I'm doing.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, honestly, personally, I found out about the CAN conference last year from watching one of your videos, and that's where I met these guys.
Oh, no.
Everything started out from
I didn't realize that. That's pretty
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. And that's how all that happened.
I wish I could smooth you like that, but I was in a corner until Brent found me, I think.
But you always had a sweet bro beard, so it's okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
See that, Eric? Just one more thing I have to thank you for. You brought me Chris.
Hey, now I hang out with Keith. and we eat Chinese tacos.
Oh, man.
Chinese tacos.
Oh, you don't know.
Don't ask.
Yeah, they got stuff like that. You go to find tacos, and it's Chinese food tacos,
Ugh. Ugh.
full of cat. It's all kinds of good stuff.
Not so bad as long as you forget about the fact that it's a cat.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh well. So, anybody got any other questions instead of me just talking?
I had something and I lost it there. Let me think.
As far as the training goes, how did you train yourself?
There you go.
How did I train myself?
Yes.
So the majority of my stuff was, you know, growing up in the shop, watching, paying attention, reading a lot on Mitchell. All I knew in the beginning was flow charts. You know, they potentially held the answer for me, you know, when I learned how to, you know, flash codes out of cars. Most of it was self-study. I was not exposed to much training early on, because all we knew, or all that I ever seen, was like these courses put on by Napa. Now I'm a Napa Auto Care Center, but their training sucks. It's probably some of the worst I've ever been to, and still to this day is. You do get a good dinner, and that's about it.
Are we talking pizza good, or are we talking dry sandwiches good?
No, I'm talking like, you know, at a restaurant good.
I don't even get that.
Yeah, but I mean, their training is absolutely horrible. At least and I've given them quite a few shots. You know, anytime they have another, you know, courses coming up, I'm like, okay, well, maybe this one will be good. And I go to it and I'm like, wow, this is this is awful. Essentially, usually they're taught by people who are, not even in the industry. It's, it's a salesman or somebody that's, PowerPoint to death with no usable facts in it, even if you wanted it.
Wow.
So that was my only training for quite a while, was that, and just, reading, and, so a lot of it's trial and error. You burn some stuff up and melt some things down, and you figure it out along the way.
So
you say reading, was it description and operations?
Well, that, I would read that, like in Mitchell, you'd read, once you found like, oh, this is a code setting criteria. Okay, well, this must be what the computer looks at. And then, of course, your mind goes wild. Well, how can I figure this out? And then, you get kind of back into the flowchart funk, and, you start to learn learn as much as you can. Honestly, the Snap-on troubleshooter was my trainer for a long time, because that started having actual, like, tech tips in it.
that's why I started.
Yeah, I was a super avid reader of, and still am, Motor Age, Undercar Digest, Underhood Digest. I still get all of those magazines, and I would read every one cover to cover.
A lot of time in the bathroom reading those.
Oh yeah, lots of time in the bathroom.
And now you're writing articles for Motor.
Yeah, that was on my bucket list, and that is probably one of the most proudest achievements in my life, as silly as it sounds. Man, like one day I hope I can write and put an article in one of these magazines, and
You've done it more than once.
Yeah, and of course, if we fast forward to today, and meeting people like Keith, and getting online and seeing like, well, wait a minute, now I have the ability to travel and move around. There's a lot better classes out here, and the best ones in our area are put on by CTI, which I think do a fantastic job, and I've been to every single class they have available.
Who's your instructor up there?
John Gillespie. So, and he does a good job, but I always feel so bad for him, because we'll go to the class and it is in a centralized location. It's usually in Corning or Horseheads, New York. So city-ish for around here, lots and lots of shops, and there'll be 6 people there, and none of them really want to be there except for me. And it's I try to ask as many questions as I can when I'm there. Help challenge him, help challenge myself, and most people just have kind of the blank stare the boss made me come look, and it sucks, because I'm like, you guys don't even know what you're missing out on. And I've tried to help and encourage some of the people going, like, you should really, have you considered what he's saying? Do you have any questions, something I can help you with? And they're just like, no, they just don't care.
Yeah, that's one of the primary reasons why we started doing what we do, just to get people in the seats to go to training.
So that actually goes into what I wanted to ask next. I'm sorry to keep on bogarting the questions, but you said you're in kind of a small town, I guess. -ish?
Yeah, we have about 1,100 people and about 9,000 cows.
So in so in your immediate area or even surrounding areas, is training kind of a priority for technicians and mechanics out there, or is it kind of just I want to wrench and do my thing and send everything to Eric?
The majority of shops, and this doesn't apply to all of them, but I would say the big majority is, give me tires, give me oil changes, give me struts, shocks, inspections. Forget about the anything difficult. They don't want drivability problems. They don't want money lights. If they do, they just want to shotgun a few parts. If that doesn't fix it, the end-all, cure-all answer is send it to the dealer.
So you put an oxygen. You said we put an oxygen sensor in it and send it out.
All 4.
So ever thought about hosting like a kind of like a play day over at your shop? Just have bring people down in and let them, give a couple pointers, have them bring their stuff, show them how to use it.
Well, that's an area in which I struggle a little bit. I've never felt competent enough to do that, to where I can tell people, this is how it should be done. I feel that I'm always, learning and growing myself, so I've just never. I think it's more of a lack of confidence than anything. Just because I've been to, legit training classes. You go to, a class that Bernie puts on, you just feel like a moron the entire time you're there. Like, wow, I didn't realize how stupid I was.
He's got that. He's got
really
that ability,
good at that, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, the guy is brilliant. There's no doubt about it. And I'm like, well, I certainly can't teach people. Like, let me show you how I spin on my filter. I use new oil on the ring. What am I going to teach somebody after going to something like that?
Well, I freely admit I suck, but I would love, if I still had my shop, I'd love to have people. just to show what I know, just to pass it on,
Yeah, and the thing is, like when I go to other shops, because I go to other shops to do some programmings and diags and stuff like that, and I show up to their shop, and it surprises me that very few guys in the shop will actually want to know what you're doing more than they want to know how long you're going to be before I can call a customer.
Yeah, that's frustrating for me too. Since
Yeah.
going full-time 100% programming and diag, I really expected to get more of the normal customers that I had before, kind of part-time, which were really just like, hey, why don't you show me what you're doing? And instead it's just like, hey, will you be done in time so I can get this car in here for struts? I need that bay.
Yeah. And that,
Eric, you've been to Staten Island.
yeah, and that's the thing. I go hang out with Keith, and no offense to the people down there, but they don't care. They want him to get there as quick as he can, and get the car out of their life. I have 2 shops here that I go to that there's one guy in each shop that wants to know, and as soon as I found that out, I have him come over like, hey, do you want to help me with this? Go get your, the both shops are both Snap-on tool users. I said, go get your Varus. The other one has, I don't know, the little 2-channel one. I'm like, go get your scan. So I'm going to show you how to do this, and I show them how to do it. And both of the shops I've supplied them with, Power Pro 4s. I've built them, high amp test lights. I've bought them incandescent test lights, and when I show up and I just say, here's your tools. So when you call me and I say, well, can you do this quick test for me, so maybe I don't have to come out there, they have the ability to now. And thankfully, both of them guys, for the couple years I've been going there, I've seen them actually grow to where they're pretty good. When they call me, I know that they actually have like a real problem now. Not that small problems aren't real, but I'm not going there to kick the bottom of a fuel tank and tell them you need a new fuel pump.
Right.
And legit, I've been called there for stuff like that, and it just blows my mind.
Hey,
So Eric,
today I was. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Jim Kokonis, I don't know if you know who that is, but he's a former full-time trainer at CTI, but now is a curriculum developer at CTI. He just told me to tell you to just do it. You'll do a great job.
That's what
Here's
John
the question. Here's the question I have for you. Like, do you have enough people in your area that would be interested and would actually show up?
I could rank. I am on a very good basis with all of the local shops. I have no competition per se, because if they have a problem, they typically will call me. So I'm on first name basis. I know all the shop owners. So I could wrangle up enough people to come.
What about talking to John about doing a standalone like hands-on scope class and you hosting it at your shop?
Yeah, I've actually spoke to John about this because I get along with him quite well. We'll text occasionally, and I always stay after and talk to him at class. And he had mentioned at his next upcoming class that I could help him teach, to kind of get my feet wet. Hopefully his boss isn't listening, because I don't know if that's all all legit. But I'm on a pretty good terms with John, and I was like, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. I'd like to review the material first, and I'm quite hands-on, so I think if we had if I was able to host, something that was hands-on, I'd probably feel a lot more comfortable. Like, hey, well, we've got this broken car. I'm better when I'm proposed with questions. Let's say we had several, mechanics here and say, hey, we got this car here. We have, has a misfire. What's your approach? Mm-hmm. And I'm better at, correcting and directing from that standpoint to say, well, have you considered this, help a little bit more with the analytical thought process, more so than, let's yank the spark plugs out. Well, what can we do for the driver's seat? And, kind of help build that thought process, because from all the training classes I've been to, that seems to be the biggest component that's always missing. They just have no analytical thinking whatsoever, or no real diagnostic process. So
that's my thing. I really believe in hands-on is the future. It's the best way to learn.
Yeah, and a lot of the guys in this industry, that was it, because they got started in this, perhaps because they weren't good at, book material and, reading and comprehension. But, if somebody showed them how to do something and why they're doing it that way, then, they could understand it. And, I was in that boat. It was terrible in school. Just didn't, I didn't graduate with my class or anybody. And it wasn't my thing. I hated reading, and learning stuff I knew wasn't going to be important to me. Like,
Like math.
yeah,
But then you realize that you need the math.
yeah.
You need all the math.
No, you don't need math. You just need a calculator that can do fractions and.
And convert. Well, I use the all data converter for conversion. Yeah,
Yeah, I use an Apple converter all the time. Not gonna lie.
I do it all the time, man.
I just use Ivan.
Yeah, yeah. We can always call Ivan. Yeah,
Ivan is our Bernie.
yeah,
Yeah, he's a funny guy.
yeah. It's brilliant.
That's awesome. So that sounds awesome. I really think yeah, everybody's calling for a meetup in the chat. So we're all going to upstate New York. We're going to pack up your shop. Going to kill your parking lot. Going to kill the town. Take all of the ice cream, and then we're
Oh
gonna
no, you stay away from ice cream girls.
Let's not do it in the winter. Okay. And make sure whatever cars you bring in have 0 rust on them.
Yes.
I'll start looking now.
Yes.
So we'll have to get a brand new one out of the.
Oh, we could break a rental car up there. I mean, hang
I mean, that doesn't happen. What are you talking about? Shh.
Yeah.
People listening, that's not how it happened.
Yeah, I've never seen New Level Auto take a rental car and poke every hole in the harness on it ever.
Never happened.
Dude, I am a Pearson fool. I'm down here like there's no rust around me. I'm like, oh, just pierce it. It's fine.
Oh, my nail polish game is strong, man. I got all kinds of nail polish in my piercing kit.
I got like 3 bottles of liquid electrical tape in my truck.
So since we're talking about nail polish, let's why clear nail polish? That's the one you hear the most of the time. Why do you guys think it's clear?
It's not colored.
It's
Yeah,
clean.
I don't like to look like I've been there.
There's no big colored goober.
Years
on
ago,
it.
I asked Matt Fonslow, and I was hoping for some like scientific, like the chemical compound that works better, and he's like, no, I think it's because dudes don't want to look like they're your cross dressers when they buy.
Yeah, you go to another dude's toolbox and you pull out pink sparkly nail polish. I'm just saying.
Well, in that case, you haven't seen my pink sparkling nail polish.
Cool.
That's funny. I'm currently taking applications for people to do ride-alongs in my area. I got a couple techs that are interested, so it'll be good to see how that kind of works out. I think it's really
You're just gonna charge them $1,000 a week, bro?
Yeah.
no, I'm just gonna let them ride along. That's
They'll paint your nails for you.
I did it. Yeah, I had a couple techs ask about it, so it's something I'm going to start doing more of. I think I really enjoy it as well, being able to teach somebody. I mean, it's been fun.
Yeah, I've always enjoyed teaching somebody who has a willingness to learn. I've always been very reluctant to teach somebody who just wants the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, I'll tell them to their face. I'm like, man, if I only want to help you if you're willing to help yourself.
Yep.
When you were working for your dad, obviously you were willing to learn. You like to be on point. Yeah, I'm sure you worked with other people at that shop.
Yeah, I did. So at the point that I was working with him, it was, half the shop was all big truck, heavy equipment, and it was myself and usually 1 or 2 other guys that ran the car end. And I don't know if it was, a pride issue, but I always wanted to be the best. I always wanted to be better than the other guy. And the only way to do that was to learn and get better. And I think there's always, part of every, kid who always wants to impress his dad. And that was always something that was very difficult for me to do. So I think I always strived for that. And perhaps that's, made me what I am today is, I just always wanted to impress my dad or one up him and be better at something than he is. So.
And what you wonder why you got fired?
Yeah.
But I was going to my point is, so did you find yourself helping people along with diagnosed, trying to teach them, and did you kind of lead that in your shop, or?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The guys that I work with, we would work on stuff together, and we would learn together. And I think everybody I worked there with, had the willingness to. The ones who didn't, they were, they're gone tomorrow. They didn't last long because they just, they didn't want it, and they were there for a paycheck, and my dad would see right through them, and they just didn't last.
Did you find them kind of using you as a crutch, or did their brain turn off and like, oh, Eric's here, he'll walk me through this?
Typically, those type of people, they don't want you to walk you through it. They just want you to fix it for them.
Okay.
You know, you want to work on this car. You know, I took a look at it. I'm not sure what's wrong with it. You know, just pass it along type thing.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
I think for all of us that like to share, I think we learn pretty quickly, like who you want to share with. You know, you got guys that don't want to learn, and you early on, you kind of you fight it. It's like banging your head against the wall. You're trying to encourage them to have that desire to learn, and it's very frustrating. I think after a while, we start to learn. You know, it's not worth the effort. Let me hang out with this dude that wants to actually learn something.
Yeah, and I guess I can kind of echo off that point, and that is a little bit of the struggle I've had with what YouTube has become for me now, which is, had I known where it was going to go, honestly, I would have started with an alias. I would have been, you know, the car fixer guy, you know, something like that. I would not have exposed my real name and my real shop, because I get calls from people like that. The phone here I'll probably have 30 to 50 phone calls a day from people wanting silver bullets.
Wow.
Wow.
That's
Yeah.
crazy.
Initially, you know, when my YouTube channel, let's say we had, you know, like, you know, 5,000 or 8,000 subscribers, you know, you'd get a call from a guy and you know, he'd like, oh yeah, I love your videos, and, you know, kind of, you know, toot your horn a little bit. You're like, oh wow, you know, somebody actually called me, you know, that's kind of neat. But now it became very burdensome and overbearing, where people would call and say, my car doesn't run. What do you think it is? And I was kind of, because I'm a little naive, you know, I was tricked into that a little bit in the beginning. Like, well, you know, what have you done? You know, having a willingness to help. You know, what have you done to the car? Oh, nothing. Well, is it, you know, does it not start because it doesn't have spark, or is it missing fuel? Does it crank over? Well, I don't really know. And then I very quickly, after, you know, several calls of a very similar nature, learned that they just want to know what part to tell their buddy to put on the car. And it put a really bad taste in my mouth, because that's just the way the majority of the calls were. And to the point, you know, I just had to put a stop to it. So there's just, you know, there's no more calls, and I do not take any more work from YouTube. And that sounds probably ridiculous, because some people are willing to come, you know, hundreds of miles. But I have found that turns into a little bit of a tobacco, because they travel that distance with perhaps an intermittent problem. And if I can't duplicate it, you know, now it's a problem. They've taken time off work. They've gotten a motel. They've, you know, driven this far, you know, and thus far I've been able to help anybody who's, you know, done that. But I just fear there's going to be that day when, you know, when I can't fix it, or, you know, something like that's going to happen. And, you know, now you're the biggest a-hole out there, because, you know, they spent all this money, you know, to get here and stuff, and you can't find this intermittent skip that happens once a month.
Mm-hmm.
So I just avoid that. I stick with my local business, and, you know, just run it from there.
That's good. I mean, as a business owner, I can relate, because even when we have clients, you know, at first it's like, wow, they drove all the way from whatever, 2 hours away to come to my shop. Like, that's kind of cool. It makes you feel good, but all it takes, I mean, we know this isn't the perfect business. You know, all it takes is some weird fluke thing. Now you're looking at potentially having to tow that car 2 hours to your shop on your bill because something stupid happened. You know, so.
Yeah. You know, and that's what I worry about. So, you know, I don't like turning down business. I don't want to discourage people if they wanted to, you know, come here and have me do work. But I tell them, you know, right up front, look, you know, I mean, they think I'm the automotive Moses just because I make a YouTube video, and, you know, I'm going to take my staff and touch their car and, you know, be healed. But, you know, I tell them it's not like that. You know, you see what I can fix on YouTube. I, you know, by no means, you know, the smartest guy out there. I simply make videos. You know, I encourage them, like, have you looked into, you know, finding a local shop? Ask your friends, you know, where do they go? It blows my mind that, you know, you're going to drive all the way here for me to put an ignition coil on your car. But, you know, I can't stop them, but I try to help them out in other ways.
I hear you, man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I deal with that too, with on the phone sometimes. People looking for silver bullets.
Yeah.
And they just want the answer, and I always make them work. It's gotten to the point now that people actually request not to talk to me. Because they're looking for silver bullet.
I want you to know, you guys set me up, okay? I got it on mute now. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, I got DeFazio's phone number here. If you just want to post that, I mean, he always answers my questions, so we can.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
Ooh.
you too.
Yeah, we can make a listing of that.
Yeah, let's see here. It's 6. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
what
maybe
phone number you want
yeah.
to put up?
Anytime.
We'll call him, blow up his phone right now. No, just live.
Wish Rich was here. I wonder, being a full-time trainer, I wonder if he gives his number. I think he gives his email out.
Yeah.
Yeah, most trainers do.
Wally Meridian gives his telephone number with ATG every single class. I remember being in a class with over 200 people at a division, and he told those 200 people
Wow.
his telephone number. He said, "Call anytime, and I'll get back to you." He says, "If it's on the weekend, I can't. He always says this. If it's on the weekend, I can't guarantee the condition I'll be in."
Yeah, I mean, it's good. It's good to have a network. You know, I mean, I'm very thankful to have, the ability to call Keith DeFazio. When I get, in a jam or want to kind of bounce something off him. I enjoy having that option.
Identikey?
Yeah, Keith. Yeah, I call Keith and say, "Hey, have you seen this?" He says in his heavy accent, "Yeah, buddy. Go down there. You wiggle that wire and."
Oh, really? That was a,
You sound just
get-out
like him.
impersonation.
Yeah.
It was pretty good. I have two Identikeiths. I have an Identikeith Perkins and an Identikeith DeFazio.
Nice.
But yeah, it's important to have a network. I mean, just like what you guys are starting. I mean, you have your entire network of friends because you're going to get backed in a corner someday too. And man, I don't know what's going on. I need to, who do you call? When you're the guy. Who do you call?
Who's calling you now, Keith?
Actually, this is for EVAP, so I think this might be up Eric's alley.
EVAP at 10 o'clock at night, just by the way. EVAP at
Oh,
10 o'clock.
give me the EVAP code, Keith. I'm the EVAP master, man. What do you got?
PO446 2006 Chevy Trailblazer.
Oh,
He's already replaced the vent valve.
Oh,
Yeah.
is it rusty on top of the fuel tank? Come on.
Dormant.
We're trying to get the purge and seal right now on a snap-on.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, good luck. You should have an Altel.
Keith loves also.
Oh, he does.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
Every time I go there, he's wearing his Altel shirt.
I seen it.
Yeah, exactly.
I got an Autel Light. Can you see that there? This is
It doesn't
Autel
work?
Light. Now watch, yeah, exactly right. Like
Oh, you melt my retinas.
Because you ran it over.
So another good source of information I've found and troll on quite a bit is the Diag.net, which I know you guys do some stuff with, but that has been a wealth of information. I enjoy that much more than I enjoy any of the groups on Facebook, so to speak. Not that any of them are awful, but the Diag.net has been pretty cool. I love going on there and reading what guys are doing and how they're fixing them and stuff like that. That's been
It is
Conversations on there are amazing, man. Like,
Yeah.
they're pretty awesome.
Yeah, it's full of people that are looking to help, which is great.
Yeah.
Just car nerds like us, man.
Yeah.
But smarter than me, anyways.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
Yeah, more. There's guys on there looking to grow and know, and they're not just looking for the silver bullet.
Yeah.
That's been pretty
Yeah.
refreshing to be able to see actual answers and not just I think it's XYZ.
Yeah,
Yeah. Talk to people about how to test stuff instead of telling them this is common on that car.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I seen that last week, and it was bad injector. Did you put injectors in it? And then the person never joins the conversation again. But yeah,
Car network run by car nerds for car nerds.
yeah.
If you ever get the opportunity to watching Scott Brown nerd out on a car, it's kind of funny.
Yeah, I've gotten to meet him a couple times now, and he seems like a pretty legit cool guy. Even though when I signed up on Diag.net, I was supposed to get a T-shirt and it never showed up. Just
Me
saying.
neither, man. Listen, I was supposed to get a shirt. What's the gift? The goodie package? Mouse pad.
They don't make that small.
I got one.
Yeah, I even paid the whole year subscription just in case they want to miss the T-shirt. Still no
We
T-shirt.
should start the bidder Diag.net member club.
All right, I'll start it. You chime in because I think I was supposed to get a T-shirt and then I believe a sticker, and I like my stickers. And, yeah, so I'll go on there. I'll start the first bad post.
Speaking of stickers, we got to send you a sticker for your sticker wall.
Oh yeah.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I'm still missing my mouse pad, and I use a mouse pad every day. It's killing me.
Oh man,
Yeah.
should we title it like Diag.net ripped me off? That's
Oh man.
That's kind of
Or
fun.
F blank 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 Scott.
Yeah.
I may or may not have just sent over a message to Scott.
Oh,
Tell him not to watch around the 2 hour mark.
Yeah. Wow, has it been 2 hours?
No, 1 hour.
No. 1 hour. Oh, it feels like 2 hours, man.
I may or may not wear a large if you do, get a hold of him.
Large. Okay.
I did ask for a small, Scott. If you can't have them, I'll take a medium.
They really don't make smalls. I don't think. You want a children's 3T, Bryn?
They gave all those to Tanner already.
I did buy pants in the hefty kids section one because I didn't have to hem them. I mean, they were already right.
You see that song? Was that song on Jimmy Fallon got my tight pants on? Everybody talking about my tight pants. Got my tight pants on.
You plan on doing any training events this year, Eric?
Well, I'm gonna I'll be down at TST. That's coming up, I believe.
Yeah, in March, I think.
Yeah, in March. So I'd like to go down to that. I usually go down and hang out with Keith for a few days, and we drive around and drink Dunkin' Donuts and attempt to fix cars, and then we go to TST. And I try to remember to pay all my tolls because last time I went, it was pretty expensive.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I've been there.
Here we have a 4-lane, and that's the big road. When I go down there, I just get all confused. The next thing you know, there's flashing lights and. Yeah.
Oh man.
Oh yeah, I got a lot of bills in the mail.
Oh, let me tell you a funny story about that. I did that once. My E-Pass got screwed up, but somehow my license was different than they screwed up my license at the DMV, so my tickets never went through. So I went to go try to buy my house. I had judgments against me from DMV for all these red light tickets I didn't know I got, and all things I didn't know I got, and it was ridiculous. It was like over $1,000 in judgments before I could get my mortgage for my house.
Oh.
It was insane.
Yeah,
I feel you.
yeah, it's brutal driving down there. If you don't know where you're going. Of course, you're listening into your Garmin, and the toll booth is 16 lanes wide, and there ain't nobody there, and they don't take cash. You got to have an easy pass. And so eventually, I just said, screw it. I just blow right through them. Like I figured, well, they'll send me a bill, I'm sure, and yeah, they did.
Yeah, how'd that work out for you?
I tell you what, the Jersey Turnpike is quite long, and that George Washington Bridge is very expensive.
Yes, it is. Especially if you screw up and go around it twice.
Yeah, no, I only went through it once.
That's hilarious.
You're just gonna park the car and say, "F it, I'm not doing it again."
Well, yeah, I mean, I typically, when I go there, I just park my truck and I ride around with Keith because I'm the only idiot who goes to Staten Island driving a 4-door pickup truck.
Oh, I drove to Staten Island in a BMW. It was not fun.
Yeah.
John Bridgewater took me to San Francisco in his Super Duty crew cab long bed. That was pretty interesting.
That's like the polar opposite of San Francisco.
Parked it next to 4 Priuses.
Yeah. Coexist stickers.
So what's it going to take to get you on a plane to Vision? That's the big question.
A lot of alcohol to get him on a plane.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of alcohol.
The B.A. Baracus routine,
Yeah, no, I've never been on an airplane.
Well, we need John Rogers to go, and he won't fly either. So let's just get a crew. Like, I'll fly to New York, and Keith and me and Eric and John will just drive out. Let's do it.
I don't know. Having been a mechanic, my whole life, I can just see that pissed off airplane mechanic, missing this 10mm socket as like 30,000 feet in the air. And
well, they're built better than Cavaliers, I think.
Well, it's the fall will kill you. It's a sudden stop.
Yeah.
I mean, you
guys,
probably won't
I was this close to getting him to go to Vision, and then they locked up my supplier, Mr. Cosby.
Just one more roofie in. Just one more. Could have got him there.
I was going to ask that earlier. Like, you being a one-man show, how often do you get a chance to get away from the shop?
Well, I close as often as I want to. So, you know, in the summertime, usually we'll take like a week off, you know, go do something. More often than not, I'll take like extended weekends. You know, I'll close for, you know, like a Monday, Friday, because I'm not open on Saturday. So we'll just do like a Monday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday thing. You know, we do a lot of camping and stuff with the kids, stay at a lot of state parks and things like that. You know, I'm a very avid, you know, bow hunter. So come October, I get pretty scarce around here, you know, particularly as the rut starts to kick in. You know, I take a lot of time off, or I'll just be really late to work a lot.
Oh, don't tell the boss.
Yeah, no, I just schedule around it. I'm like, you know, I base my work off the moon phase, so. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if any of you guys are deer hunters, but it's pretty serious business around here, so.
No, Staten Island is only deer castration. We don't hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dude, I've seen those deer. They're crazy.
Yeah, deer down there dying of old age, man.
They ain't scared of nothing.
The New Yorkers.
You need to teach Keith DeFazio how to do that a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I need to get them a crossbow so it's nice and quiet. Just...
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm guessing before it gets way too late, Brent had some stuff he wanted to go over a little bit.
Chat people asking.
Yeah.
What is that, right?
about your scan data stuff.
Yeah.
No. Well, should we?
Well, it is 10, and Keith's got to drive. Eric's got to drive home.
Yeah. So yeah, if you guys are done grilling me, and I'll get
anything you wanna say real quick before you take off? Anything?
I didn't prepare a speech or anything.
No.
In closing.
Anything
No, but
you want to talk about, or?
You know, I think it's great what you guys are doing, and you know, it's very encouraging to meet, you know, folks like you and you know, people who are like-minded, and it's, you know, nice to see you guys, you know, out in, you know, Facebook and the forums and helping people and, you know, trying to, you know, help people along in this industry and, you know, on diag.net and, you know, just around. It's, you know, it's kind of a bit of a breath of fresh air when, you know, for years, you know, prior to social media and stuff, you know, you kind of feel alone in this industry, particularly if you're, you know, striving to be good and, you know, growing up in the sticks and stuff like that. So it is great. And this is, I think, probably one of the best benefits that could come from YouTube is, you know, meeting folks like yourself. And,
Same here, man.
you know,
Thanks, yeah.
and, you know, and even, you know, not just, you know, you guys that we know, I mean, you know, the guys in the comments, I mean, if you know, you watch comments, you know, I mean, there's a lot of fantastic people out there. And so, you know, it's, you know, just thanks for that, I guess, if I had to say.
Thank you.
No, I think we all feel the same way. I think we are all in the same boat. We felt like we were alone. That's the best way to say it, you know. And just broaden your spectrum and, like you said, get off the dirt road. And,
Yep, get on that super highway.
Yeah, man.
It's been pretty awesome. You know,
I feel like if we were all together, we'd do a big bro hug right now.
I may or may not pinch your butt, so you might have to watch my hands. Just saying. I get a little hand hug.
There's no may or may not about it with me. Just,
I'm just saying.
I just want to know who's going to give you the stink with pants on, man. How does that? That's got to be pretty bad, man. Oh.
I just want to say when Perkins, when we were all shared the place on Super Saturday, he did fall asleep with pants on, woke up with pants off. Just saying.
All right, guys, I'm out here. So thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
great time.
Thanks for coming by.
All right.
Well, thank you for being on.
Yeah, all right, man. Take care.
Thank you.
Yep, see you guys.
that was cool.
Wow, that was awesome.
Just do we real quick? We want to remind everybody that the deadline for the Vision trip So, I always struggle with this word, submittals. What would we call that? Whatever. The deadline's the 21st.
Oh, yes.
Apply.
Yes, the vision trip deadline, right?
Yes,
Yes.
yes, the vision trip deadline. So
Yes. So if you haven't applied, please send us a story that does not have your name in it, because we want it to be completely anonymous, and put a fake email in the little email box, and put a phone number that you will answer.
we could have just removed the email box, but we really enjoy your fake.
Actually, the,
Yes.
the webmaster doesn't allow me to remove
I know,
it.
I'm just
tried. I tried.
But you brought up a good point. Well, we got to remind people, whoever applies. Well, did we pick a date for when we're going to announce it?
Well, it all depends on many of them.
Yeah, we're gonna, and
We got to read through
we'll
a
be
whole
sure
bunch
to
of
pick a
emails.
date and a time that we're going to announce it, but you have to be reachable during the time that we announce the winner. If you're not, then we move on.
Yeah, we will be embarrassing you on a live stream, so make sure to answer your phone.
And then you also mentioned that be sure that you can take the time off. If you can't take the time off, we'll probably have like a time frame that you, well, I don't know how that'll work, but you have to be able to take the time off to go to Vision. So, please. So, anything else about it?
I
No.
think that's it. Yeah. Let's go on to Bryn. You got some interesting stuff. I wanted to see it.
Well, I don't know how interesting it is, but well,
A bunch
first
of
of all, when you talk about fuel control and fuel trim issues, I think for most of the training material, if you're attending training, refers to mass airflow type systems, but there are obviously a lot of cars out there. Chrysler's been mass air for a long time, or speed density for a long time. Honda's had, hit or miss speed density versus mass airflow systems. And then there's a trend nowadays where they're moving a lot more towards speed density systems, especially towards EcoBoost systems. So when you're dealing with fuel control issues, fuel trim issues, you just have to make sure, like as our friend Jim Morton says, know your enemy. You have to know what you're dealing with, because they don't react the same way to the different failures. But there's a couple things that I wanted to demonstrate tonight. So you need to know how speed density systems react to certain failures, and you need to know how mass airflow systems react to certain failures. Of course, mass airflow systems directly measure the air entering the engine. It takes that as there's a heavy weight on that to decide how much fuel to spray into the engine. That's like your base calculation. When you're dealing with speed density, the heaviest weight is on the manifold absolute pressure sensor. So you just have to know, I think it's important to know traditionally how they respond to faults. But once you know that, you need to keep in mind that they do not all act the same way. Strategies change, and we're seeing more and more that with modern vehicles, that they don't react the way we expect them to react. So just keep that in mind. And one example that I have, it's not a terribly new car, but it is a Chrysler. It's a speed density system. And I'll ask you guys, traditionally, when you have a speed density system, what do you expect when you have a vacuum leak? With regard to fuel trims and other maybe certain data PIDs that you're on scan to, what would you expect?
You asking us?
Yeah. There's a delay. I mean, the audience can chime in too, but is there a 40-second delay or something like
Yeah,
that?
about 40 seconds.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can wait for them, but I don't know. You guys want to be quiet for 40 seconds?
I'll play
I don't know
some
if I can
Jeopardy
handle it.
music.
I don't know if Perkins can do it.
Yeah, I don't think it could happen.
Someone to answer that, not me. I'm stupid.
Well, let's think through how that sense system. I mean, is that what you want to do, Bryn? Talk about how the system's designed?
Yeah,
and
I think we just
come up
talked
with
about
how.
it.
Wait.
Yeah.
We're getting some answers here. We're getting some answers.
Okay.
Sweet.
So
Sweet.
Gaston says, hi, idle from map. You get no fuel trim affected from Super Mario. And yeah, all right, so those are the two right now. So high idle is expected, and almost no fuel trim affected.
So those are great answers. Speed density, and I would say that I agree with that traditionally. Speed density system. When you have a vacuum leak, So because your base calculation is coming off the manifold absolute pressure sensor, when you have a vacuum leak, your intake manifold pressure actually increases. So you would think that because the intake manifold absolute pressure increases, that's pretty much, as far as the ECM is concerned, that could be looked at as an increase in load. So when you have an increase in load, you want to spray more fuel in the cylinder. So traditionally, you might think, understanding how the system works, that if you have a vacuum leak, that you would have increased, more fuel than you would need. So in turn, you would have negative fuel trims. But what we see more often than not is if it were to have any fuel trims, it would be negative. But most of the time, you have very little reaction. And the reason for that is the ECM sees the increase in idle, and it'll actually either, if it's a throttle by wire car, it'll actually close the throttle to maintain that idle. And because of that, the manifold absolute pressure basically levels out to where it was before the vacuum, before the throttle was closed. Therefore, the calculation, adaptions aren't really needed. But again, those are traditional. So that's the difference. Mass airflow, of course, directly measuring air coming in that's not being directly measured. Of course, the ECM is going to spray for a reduced airflow that's being measured. That's actually, the engine is actually moving. So it's going to increase fuel trims because it's going to need to add more fuel to it. So they react differently, of course, and that's traditional. The point that I want to make tonight is that they don't always react the way you expect. I don't know if this is going to work because I've sent Brian some.
I got him. Do you want the small leak or large leak?
Well, the small leak might help kind of back up the way it works traditionally, I guess. Let's go with the large leak. This is.
All right, what are we looking at?
Let's see here.
Okay. Can you see it?
Are you zoomed out to show the whole file?
Yes.
Show the whole file?
If you're using your phone, you can actually pinch to zoom on his display.
Would you like me to zoom in further, or?
I'm trying to get a feel for. It looks like right where your cursor is where the vacuum leak was induced. Do you guys agree? Based off that, engine RPMs increased, and the throttle is just after that is trying to close in order to maintain engine RPM. Now this is something to consider. Now this may not work out the way I hoped it to work out, but this is something to consider. It depends on the size of the leak. If the ECM can't close the throttle enough to maintain engine RPM, then you may have more adaptions. Like traditionally, if it's a smaller leak, like I said, the throttle will just close. You'll maintain engine RPMs. The manifold pressure will kind of come back in range. And you won't have adaptions. But if you have a large leak and the engine can't close the throttle enough, and your pressure is still kind of off, the area, the normal area, then it may have adaptions that take place. And like I said earlier, on a speed density system, because an increase in pressure is looked at as a load on the engine, then you would expect to see more fuel sprayed in because of the increased perceived load. And then you would have negative fuel trims because of that, because it would be spraying more fuel than it needed. But in this case, I think if you were to look down the line a while, if you move the cursor to the right, I would say, initially short-term fuel trim reacts the way we expect, and it ramps up really quick. Positive, but we would, just what I just said is that we would, knowing how the system works, we would expect negative fuel trims. But we can see here, we're going positive. So short-term fuel trims react. Over time, you can see on the right, long-term fuel trims respond to short-term fuel trims, and you see short-term fuel trims come back closer to zero and all the burden of the adaptation is on the long-term fuel trim. If you see, let's say start at frame 150, you can see long-term fuel trims are, they're pretty much leveling out. If you go a little farther to 190, and that's another thing I want to mention, is make sure that you're looking at both short-term and long-term fuel trims. I think I've personally run into a lot of technicians that focus on short-term fuel trims and they don't really consider what's happening in long-term. But if you can see here, what do we have here? Move it back or over to the right 1 frame or 2. It looks like it dips down there. But you can see, if we do the math real quick, we have probably 13% or so positive total if you were to add short term and long term. So we talk about looking at both. We call it total fuel trim, and it's the total of both short term and long term. And if you have rear fuel trim, then it would include that as well. But you can see here, if you look at bank 1, I'm looking at bank 1, 18% on long-term fuel trim and negative 5.3% on short-term fuel trim. So if you were to add that together, you have about 13% positive fuel trim on that vehicle. So what's happened here, instead of the ECM looking at the increased manifold pressure and assuming that that is load, now the strategy for this Chrysler, now they don't always work this way. Traditionally, they do work the way I explained earlier, but this is one of those exceptions, and that's my main point is it's important to understand what would normally happen, but don't fixate on that. Don't make decisions based off what your past experience is alone, because strategy can change from year to year. But what you can see here is that we have positive fuel trims in our large leak. And what's happened, instead of the ECM looking at the increased pressure of the manifold absolute pressure sensor and assuming that that's an increased load and adding more fuel than it needs, it's putting more weight on the throttle body. So it has reduced the throttle body angle to try to maintain engine speed, and there's more weight on the throttle body when calculating base injector pulse width. So it assumes if the throttle body is that much closed to maintain, then we're going to need to spray this much fuel for that closed throttle body. And unfortunately, where that throttle body is closed more, it's going to assume that it needs less fuel, and that's why we have positive fuel trims. So that's pretty much it. I had the small vacuum leak on there, and then I had a medium vacuum leak and a large vacuum leak. This vehicle was in for something completely different. I just decided to save this, do this little experiment and save this file just because I thought it was interesting. So that's pretty much it. Anybody have any challenges or questions? We have the small leak and the medium leak that we can look at too if you want. But
No, I was just going through the comments.
Say-
There's a question in there. What do you prefer to use for reading fuel trim? Like generic data or manufacturer specific?
I personally think that there's a benefit to being on the enhanced side and the global side. But because I'm an all-make shop and because I do diagnostic on all cars, I probably spend a lot more time on the global side. Because on the enhanced side, you're basically having to learn the language of that manufacturer, which isn't bad. There's data like Nissan is cool because their PID does the total fuel trim for you. You don't have to do the math. So there's benefits to using enhanced as well. But if you're working on a lot of different cars, the benefit of global standardized PIDs can really be helpful. Some of the downsides is, this is my opinion, when you have a vehicle manufacturer that has the strategy to handle, like fuel trims is one example. They have a strategy to handle their corrections, and it works. It doesn't necessarily work like global displays it. So they have to make it, I don't know if that makes sense, but they have to translate to where global works to kind of represent what they're doing, but it doesn't necessarily, not really what they're doing. So it doesn't always work, and BMW is one. I mean, you guys probably know more about this than me, but you have, these cars don't necessarily, I don't know how if I can explain it much better, but BMW has an idle fuel trim, and then they have off idle fuel trim. Am I right?
Yep.
That. So on the global side, it doesn't really work exactly that way. So in my opinion, some of that stuff sometimes can get lost in translation. I think it works out more often than not. But just
Yeah, I
something.
prefer to use it. Generally working on European stuff, I prefer to use global for fuel trim. It seems to work better for me. It at least lets me know how is the vehicle running, and then go from there. If I'm going with additive and multiplicative and adaption values, now screw that, man. Long term, short term, bank one and bank two. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I know elephants are supposed to remember things for a long time. I don't know what animal does.
Did you just call me fat? Am I an elephant now?
I was saying I don't know what animal doesn't remember, because that would be my animal spirit. So with
Goldfish? Are you a goldfish? Goldfish is your spirit animal?
yeah, people say Eeyore, really, but anyways, I can't remember things, so I think global is where I spend most of my time when it comes to fuel control, fuel trim stuff.
Cool. Wow.
So
That's
which I think is a fun one to touch on. He says, how can I tell when a car has abandoned an upstream for fuel trim and relies on the rear for fuel trim? I'm seeing more and more rear fuel trim PIDs. So,
kill it with fire.
Well, there are PIDs. This is going to be more so on your enhanced side, but some manufacturers will tell you if it's looking. There'll be a certain PID on there. It'll tell you if it's using the rear O2 sensor for corrections, to give the rear O2 sensor any kind of authority with regards to air fuel control. And the rear O2 sensor on late model cars there's a lot of benefits to using the rear O2 sensor for fuel control now, and that's, I think, probably most, if not all of them, are using what's called rear fuel trim.
yep. And they were using it even before they started actually pulling.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Before they told anybody.
that's right.
So you'll have a PID that says it's kind of this, it's like a rear fuel trim loop status, basically, and it'll tell you whether it's using that downstream for fuel control or not. And but then you'll also have oftentimes rear fuel trim that will be displayed right on the scan tool. I can't speak for all manufacturers, but a lot of the ones that I work with will have either rear or total. If you don't have rear and you have total, then you just have to do the math to see how much authority is on the downstream. For example, if you have 5% positive short term and you have 5% positive long term, and your total is like -5%, then you have 15% rear fuel trim. That's a pretty exaggerative, probably, example.
So everybody's a little bit worried about Tom. We haven't seen him blink in quite a while.
Well, he is alive because he's sitting right next to Mike. Or is he pooping? I don't know.
Mike, slap him.
No, Mike's downstairs and Tommy's upstairs. They couldn't be in the same room. Is there like a bell service you can ring a bell in the house?
Is he still breathing? Can you put a mirror under his nose, Mike?
I think Mike should run up there and see.
Oh, he's really speaking up there. Hold on. Is he decent first? We got to check.
Yeah. There's the guard dog.
You look like you're
Oh,
sneaking.
there he is.
There he goes.
He's just.
It was Mike's fault. It was totally his idea. Don't be mad.
Looks like he just woke up.
Well, cool. Anybody else want to chat about anything, or we're going to let some of these folks go? Is there any more questions, comments?
Yeah, I think everybody's looking to go home, kind of. Yeah, I think we had a lot happen today. We got a lot of stuff done.
It was awesome having Eric go on today. Really appreciate him coming on.
Yeah, that was kind of cool.
I'll say it now that he's not here. He's a guy who actually he studies. He spends his time sitting there researching, He buys his ATG books. He goes to his CarQuest classes. Not only does he do that, though, he'll buy CarQuest books from guys that have actually been out there at the classes if there was something that he missed, just that way he can get in there and get all the information that he possibly can. I mean, it's guys like that are an inspiration to me. I mean, at least we have, I was always pushing to get the access to try to get out there to the training, but, he was doing everything he could to bring the training to himself, and I never really thought of what it would be like if I was afraid to get on a plane. But, the fact that but really though, but the fact that he does as much as he does without actually, without actually being able to get out there, because of his own issue, that to me is even more impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Be intense, really.
He came down here. He came down here originally with the intention to try to pick up things off of me, and I think it drove him crazy for the first 2 days that he stayed here, because I would just sit here in the truck and I would watch him go out there and start diagnosing the car, and he's like, "Come on, I came here to learn from you." I said, "No, first I have to learn from you, and then I can show you my approach to it, and we can kind of meet somewhere along the way." And really, realistically, there's not much different between his approach and my approach, and I had to try to convince him, you're there, you're at the level that you want to be at, and there's still levels far above me. I'm nothing special, but he has to, it took him a while to realize where he's actually at.
Does he have Subaru PTSD too?
He had PTSD from a different car. Let's just say.
Okay, so I'm not alone in that. Thank God.
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, I just get some weird cars, but I think everybody gets a weird car every once in a while. I just happen to have one of them.
Yeah, I get shaky when I cross that bridge. Oh God, here I go. Oh well.
But to his point about wanting to get those guys on there, I mean, the more and more that I'm out there every day. Today, I diagnosed a car for, I'm not going to say what large shop it is, but the Three Stooges were involved.
Oh.
And,
Manny Mo and Barry?
yeah. So
Okay.
I was called out to, there's like a bunch of them around me, so it doesn't narrow it down. I was called out to program the keys in a 2007 Trailblazer. Does that ring a bell for anyone?
2007.
Yeah, they're not transponder keys at all.
Yeah.
So I get out there because it's a no crank, no start. And I said, "So what happened? Did you guys put a lock cylinder in it and keys now it won't crank?" No one came in this way. That's the problem. It only took me a few minutes to realize that there was a lot of dust where the fuse box cover had been missing, and the one clean spot where the starter relay should be was
Outstanding.
a dead giveaway. I don't know how that was missed, but it's the kind of thing where nobody even cared. They didn't want to know how I come to that conclusion. They just needed it to start and run so they could build a customer and fix it. And
But you're the hero in that story.
yeah, and then I go sit in the truck and cry myself to sleep thinking that's other people that are out there working on cars that everyone thinks is the same as me.
Hey, DeFazio,
Yeah.
what do you invoice your shops, right? Or how do you do that?
I invoice my shops, yes.
How descriptive do you get on your invoices at all?
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah, I get very descriptive, actually. I try to give them even tips about how I got there, so at least when they read through it, maybe the next time around they can take that same information, relay it over there to tech, and then he can follow it up on there. It doesn't seem to happen.
I was
I
gonna
don't
say
think
that.
they care. I'll be honest with you, I really don't think they care. I sold myself too well, I think, in the beginning, and the fact that I cover the amount of cars that I cover kind of makes it a little bit too easy for them at times. I don't know if I created a monster or if I am the monster. I'm not really sure, but going out there and offering the idea that I can diagnose any car that they have out there in just about an hour, kind of killed a lot of opportunity, I think, for them to sit there and have their guys out there, beating their heads on a car for 3 hours, which now that I think about it, after all these years, I'm saying maybe that wouldn't have been such a bad thing. Maybe that would have created a little bit more, created a few more technicians out there that actually have a clue. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's something I have a hard time dealing with. But invoicing wise, yes, I invoice them all. I try to give them as much information as I possibly can. It's I just don't even think they really care.
I'd like to see some of your invoices in there. I'm just curious because I spent 40 minutes writing, kind of detailing like a diagnostic the other day, and that's obviously not going to work. But so I need to figure out how to be more efficient.
That's the way mine started. That's actually the way mine started. Yeah, I had plenty of really detailed things. Actually, I was doing it originally as a reference for myself as well, that I would remember to go back to them. But you know, once the sheer car count gets up there high enough, you kind of sit there and go, geez, I don't even remember where I was when I did that case study. So unless you're really writing a case study and filing it away separately, you know, even remembering the shop, I mean, you start to pull up a list and say, well, it's a Nissan Altima. I'll remember that. And pull up all your Nissan Altimas, and then you realize, geez, I still have, you know, over 1,000 to go through.
Yeah,
You know?
there's a lot of Nissan in Staten Island.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the brick and mortar shop, it's not a problem. You know, I mean, it's not a problem to take a little bit of time to write the story, but for doing mobile jobs where you have to kind of move from one to another, I gotta get more efficient.
Yeah. You know, the thing about the brick and mortars over here is that even our busiest shop still comes up about 10 cars on the week average, less than what I do in the week. So it's, you know, number wise, when we sit there and we look at the list of, you know, all the cars that I try to follow through, if I was to sit there and write a really detailed description every single time, I would probably have to drop 2 cars at least off my list per day. It would really come down to that.
Yeah.
My biggest problem actually with the invoicing is the fact that I'm doing the invoicing.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah, it is tedious. Luckily, all my body shops, I can write them all at night. They don't care because, you know, they're not getting their check until the end of the week anyway. So as long as they have their invoices by the following morning, that's fine. So 1:30 when I get home, that's what I start doing.
Mike is such a sweet puppy lover.
Keith, you miss what Mike looks like when he's not getting yelled at by his wife. Mike Robinson in his natural habitat. He's a gentle soul. Can you hear us, Tommy?
Yeah, he hears everything.
Is he doing his laugh? Is he doing his laugh? Can we see him again?
That's funny. I've been pretty lucky since the beginning. I'm able to invoice every night when I get home too. I kind of just tell them what they owe me when we get done, and they write me a check or hand me cash. Then I get home and have to write receipts out, or email out receipts. Really.
You'll realize real soon that mobile is something that sneaks up on you, and it's you know, you talk to the successful mobile guys out there, and they'll all say the same thing. You know, it's you start off and you're glad to have maybe 10 phone calls a day setting up work for a week, and after a while, once it starts hitting that 50 mark, it's like, okay, I really need to get back on these cars. And then when you start getting up near the 100 count, it's like, okay, I need my hands on the car, not on the phone, not writing an invoice and trying to get things done. But yeah. I personally don't have it figured out yet. I don't know how to get through all those calls, and not sure I'm going to get there. I'm sure it'll be a battle along the way. Having somebody answer the phones for you though, useless. Absolutely.
I think probably most of the time it would be. I think it would be. But I mean, every business that's a one-man show.
It absolutely doubles the amount of calls that you'll receive during the day, because the first call is them looking to speak to you, and instead they have the person on the other end of the phone answering for you, and they just wanted to know, well, what time do you think he's going to be here? And then, since you haven't called them back yet, because I haven't called into the office and said, hey, all right, give me a list of everybody who called. If I haven't done that enough time, that means that they get a second call in the office. So that 100 call count jumps up to 200.
Yeah.
Well,
my service guy is my dispatcher for now. We'll see how that works. But so far, it's working all right. But I don't have near the volume you do. But
Yeah, and then you make the appointment, and then the people get all freaked out that you come in time, and then they send the car off
Yes.
because you're there 7 minutes late after
Yep,
after you went on a long trip.
7
Yeah,
minutes late. Yep,
Yeah.
exactly. 7 minutes late.
yeah. Then
Yeah.
it's gone.
That's a tough market, buddy. Not around here, that wouldn't happen. Not in 7 minutes, that's for damn.
7:30 a.m. I was going there to go. I actually went out to go see Chris, pick up a cable, came back, drove all the way out 3 hours, and well, more than that, almost 4 hours in total. 2 hours out, 2 hours back to grab a cable because my cable went bad. Came all the way in there at 7:30 in the morning. I show up there at 7:37, and the guy says, "Well, we didn't think you were coming, so we sent it off over to the dealership in Brooklyn."
Man, that was rough.
Yeah.
All right. Are you guys, anything else before we sign off here?
Really, I think just a thank you to everybody for coming and hanging out with us. It's awesome that you come and hang out with us and let us do what we do. And
Yeah. Did we miss any
talk on
questions?
YouTube. I was sure we missed a lot of questions.
I feel bad because I was just going to say, you guys were quiet. I wanted more questions.
That's okay. I put Keith's personal phone number on the chat.
I noticed that. Thanks.
Yeah, that's the one he doesn't turn off too, so that'd be great.
Yeah.
But again, yeah, thank you everybody for coming and hanging out with us. We're just a bunch of guys, just coming and hanging out. To come let us, come be part of the conversation. It's awesome that you guys are here, and talking too much. So
Absolutely, it is. I agree. And one thing I want to mention, we've been busy with like a lot of important like business type stuff, and I think once we get beyond some of this stuff, we're going to be able to produce some more content for you guys. So that's been a little bit. We're disappointed, and we want to keep pushing some stuff out there. So if you guys have anything you want to see, let us know. But we have a pretty cool projects in mind that we're working on. Should be pretty cool.
yeah, we are. It's crazy. They you try to do a bunch of stuff to help people out. I got to become a business. It's insane the things you got to do to help people out. We will do it because that's what we're here for.
Yeah.
That's it. Brian,
What's that?
said you good? You're quiet over there.
I'm good.
Do you have the gorilla mask?
Yeah,
What's
Tommy's Mike is coming in.
So, all right. Well, I'll just say it. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much for hanging out. And we'll be back soon because we want to chat with you. And after the 21st, we'll be back to announce the winner.
Yes, please. Submissions in.
So,
Yes. And another big giant thank you.
we will be back before Christmas. Is that what we said?
I think we'll be back probably too close to Christmas. My guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, don't make any plans on Christmas Day. That will,
The cutoff is the 21st, and we're going to have to take some time to go through them. But we want to announce them as quick as possible because we want whoever's going to have as much time as possible to pick some good classes and make arrangements. So I would say a few days after the 21st. So we're too close to Christmas, probably.
It'll be a Christmas present for somebody. All right. I guess that's it, right?
That's it.
Awesome.
Good night, everybody.
Good
Good
night.
night.